Jacob. Postpartum. Needed to find a nanny, Abigail recommended Blake, who seemed honest and dependable after she arrived at Jacob's home. She first secretly used Jacob's lipstick, then secretly wore Jacob's wedding dress, and even had an affair with Jacob's husband behind Jacob's back when Jacob found out. She wanted to fire her, but she clung to Julian, pleading after Jacob refused. She even physically assaulted Jacob. What was even more hateful, Jacob noticed the child was unusually well behaved under her care after installing surveillance cameras. She was shockingly caught on camera feeding the child sleeping pills, and frequently having an affair with Jacob's husband in the home. Jacob then initiated a fake divorce to transfer assets, and collected evidence before reporting it to the police because she had fed the child medication and interfered in Jacob's cousin and brother-in-law's affair, although she was given a suspended sentence due to her pregnancy. When she later sought out Jacob's husband while pregnant, he stabbed her to death, and he also went to prison as a result. Jacob had just finished her postpartum recovery period, and it happened to be a long weekend in early October. So she went back home to see Abigail. She was talking about the troubles of postpartum life. The baby is too fussy. I can't manage by myself. I really need to find someone to help with the baby, Mom. Do you have anyone good to recommend? Abigail frowned, thinking of a reliable person to care for the child. Finally, she suggested, why don't we have Blake help you look after the baby? Blake. Jacob had only played with Blake from Phoenix's home when they were little, but she didn't know what she was like now. Her impression was that she was honest and dependable. Jacob voiced her doubts. Blake is even younger than I am. Shouldn't she be working? How could she be a nanny for me? Abigail explained. She's been at home taking civil service exams, but she hasn't passed. Phoenix is so worried. His hair has turned white. Jacob expressed her concern and hesitation. Blake is so young. Can she really take good care of a baby? The most important thing about caring for a child is having a good heart. Blake is family to us. How could she treat the baby badly? There was some truth to that. Methods for caring for a child can be learned, but if someone has a bad heart, that's another matter entirely. Seeing that Jacob was somewhat swayed, Abigail directly called Phoenix. Have Henry come to Jacob's home. Her cousin is back. Why didn't you tell Phoenix that you wanted Blake to be the nanny? Abigail waved her hand and said Phoenix was going to make her work as a waitress looking after her cousin's child. Why would he object? Phoenix and Blake arrived quickly. Jacob observed her attire and nodded inwardly. Blake Henry dressed very plainly. She hadn't dyed her hair or worn any jewelry. Jacob wasn't against girls dressing up, but for childcare, someone like Blake was definitely more suitable. After hearing Abigail's suggestion, Phoenix's face lit up with joy. That's great. At your cousin's home. She definitely won't suffer. Jacob directly stated the terms. I'll pay you $8,000 a month. Your only task is to watch the baby. You won't need to do any housework or cook. After Phoenix heard the salary terms, his smile became even more sincere, but Blake kept her head down, not saying a word. Phoenix urgently called out, you've been taking those exams for 5 years now, and you still haven't passed. Do you want to ruin your whole life? Blake lowered her head and said meekly, I still want to try. Jacob originally wanted to give up, knowing that forcing things doesn't work out, but thinking that nannies were hard to find, and that family was more trustworthy. Henry, as long as the baby is asleep, you can do your own thing. Blake was still very hesitant, and Phoenix was anxious, wanting to hit her. Just then, the doorbell rang. Jacob's husband, Julian, walked in carrying some things. I just finished up at the company. I'm late. Blake looked in the direction of the voice, and her face suddenly turned red. Abigail introduced Henry to Julian. Hello, brother-in-law. I am Henry. Julian nodded, saying nothing further. Jacob sighed and complained, honey, I was originally hoping to have Blake come and take care of the baby for us, But now, I'll have to go back to interviewing other nannies. Julian said gently. It's alright, a live-in nanny is very important. Take your time choosing. No rush. Blake immediately looked up and said, urgently, cousin, I can do it. Onyx knew they were back and immediately brought the child back, seeing Henry. She hesitated slightly. And this is... Jacob was about to speak. But Henry, recognizing the person, eagerly introduced herself in the baby as Aunt from now on. I'll be taking care of the baby. She even bent down and offered slippers to Onyx. Originally, Onyx had some reservations, but seeing this gesture, she immediately felt at ease, nodding while changing her shoes. She shot Jacob a side glance. Your little Cruz has manners. Jacob knew Onyx was criticizing her indirectly, but Jacob didn't care. Onyx liked Henry, which was convenient. Onyx, you can teach Blake how to take care of the baby. Henry was quite quick to catch on. As soon as she heard about taking care of the baby, she immediately said, cousin, auntie, I'll go wash my hands and change my clothes. The baby was woken up before fully asleep and was now crying loudly. Jacob and Onyx tried to soothe her for a long time before she slowly calmed down, fearing the baby would cry again. Onyx quickly said, your Dean is waiting for me to cook. I'm leaving. Henry offered, cousin, let me hold her. As soon as the baby was in her arms, she puckered her lips and started wailing. Henry was flustered and sweating, unable to comfort the baby no matter what she did. Jacob took the baby, soothing the child while comforting Henry. Don't worry, the baby just isn't used to you yet. She'll get better with time. Henry stared intently at the baby and said, cousin, this baby is truly beautiful. Jacob was about to ask what part of the baby resembled her. She blurted out, the baby's nose looks exactly like brother-in-law's. He'll definitely be as handsome as him when he grows up. Jacob felt a little uncomfortable, but then thought she was overthinking it. She could only say indifferently, I hope so. She seemed quite dissatisfied with Jacob's reaction. She blurted out, cousin, you only have a 2-year degree. It's already pretty good that you found a brother-in-law who's rich and handsome. Jacob gently put down the already sleeping baby. She turned her head and coldly questioned her. Henry, what exactly do you mean by that? Her face changed. Realizing she had said something wrong, she started to backtrack, saying awkwardly, cousin, I was just praising your good fortune. I haven't been in touch with the outside world for too long, so I don't know how to talk. Please don't take it personally. After staring at her for a moment, Jacob shifted her gaze. Jacob knew what she meant. Relatives at Jacob's home all said Jacob was fortunate and had married well. A 2-year degree holder had actually managed to find a husband who was tall, handsome, and capable, but what they didn't know was this. Although Jacob was a 2-year degree holder, she had entered the e-commerce industry quite early, and she had met her husband through work. They had co-founded the company. However, Jacob usually reminded Abigail not to discuss their home affairs with outsiders, so the relatives at home had no idea about their situation. They simply thought Jacob was lucky. As soon as her husband, Julian, entered the home, Blake eagerly brought him slippers. Jacob frowned. Henry, you don't have to do that, she said awkwardly. The baby doesn't need me right now. I was just thinking of doing something else. Jacob asked, puzzled. Aren't you still taking civil service exams? You could go study now. Julian heard this and praised her. You're quite ambitious. Henry's face visibly flushed again. Jacob pulled Julian into the room and said solemnly, talk less with Blake from now on. All right. All right. You're so jealous. At first, Henry wasn't good at taking care of children. As time went on, the baby became very well behaved and quiet in her care. Jacob felt an unprecedented sense of ease, so she slowly began to return to her professional life. As soon as Julian entered the home, Henry stepped forward to take his briefcase. Jacob watched coldly, but said nothing because it was useless to say anything. She would do it anyway since Jacob had spoken to Julian last time. He hadn't spoken to Henry again. Wife. Tomorrow, you need to come with me to meet the supplier Ashley. Without you? I can't close the deal. Jacob nodded, indicating she understood. Then she went to the walk-in closet to see what clothes would be suitable for tomorrow. Henry followed closely behind her. She said enviously, "Cousin, you actually have so much makeup." Jacob hummed in response. Continuing to choose her clothes for tomorrow, she leaned in close to Jacob and said eagerly, "Tomorrow, you're going out with brother-in-law. You absolutely must dress up nicely. Don't embarrass him." Jacob was about to speak when she heard the baby crying. Henry anxiously ran out. "I need to go comfort the baby." Her greatest quality was how attentive she was to the baby. For that reason, whatever unpleasant things she said on a daily basis, Jacob didn't bother to dispute. The next day, Jacob and Julian went out to meet the supplier. Henry held the baby and saw them off. Jacob instructed, "If there's any problem, call me directly. Don't worry, the baby will definitely be well behaved." "But you're going out like that?" Jacob looked at her clothes, puzzled. "A suit, a briefcase, it was perfectly presentable. Is there a problem?" Henry said, impolite lie. "Cousin, why don't you spruce yourself up? Women should be refined." It was then that Jacob noticed her lips. They were a vibrant, tempting red. Jacob turned and told Julian to wait for her in the car. The sound of the door closing made her stop nagging. She said somewhat uneasily, "Cousin, I'm doing this for your own good." Jacob glanced at the child in her arms, suppressing the anger in her heart. "Henry, don't wear lipstick when you're taking care of the baby, and if you like something, you can tell me first. I'll give it to you. Don't just secretly use my things." She immediately pressed her lips together. Then she quietly explained, "I just thought it looked so beautiful." Jacob said indifferently, "The one you're wearing is yours now. Just don't touch my makeup without permission next time." As soon as Jacob got in the car, Julian asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just a young girl who loves beauty." This supplier was an old acquaintance, and the cooperation discussion was very smooth, much earlier than expected, ever since Jacob became a mother. Once she finished her tasks, she just wanted to rush home. The home was quiet ever since Henry arrived. The baby at Jacob's home had been especially well behaved, and she no longer cried constantly or stayed awake like before. The living room was empty. Jacob pushed open a downstairs room, and only the baby was sleeping. Just as Jacob was about to call Henry, she heard a sound coming from the walk-in closet. Jacob tiptoed to the walk-in closet and peered through the open door crack. She immediately gasped. Her mind was buzzing. In front of the mirror, Henry was wearing Jacob's wedding dress and singing. After Jacob took out her phone and recorded the video, she pushed the door open and entered. "Henry, do you have no shame?" Henry was engrossed in admiring herself in the wedding dress. When she suddenly saw Jacob, she was so startled that she instantly dropped to her knees. She nervously explained, "Cousin, I just tried on this wedding dress because it was beautiful. I didn't mean anything by it. I'll take it off right now." The more anxious she got, the more stuck the zipper became. Jacob stood in front of her, looking down. "You're protesting too much. Did I say you had other intentions?" She became even more flustered. Jacob reached for her waist, helping her pull down the zipper. "Ah, it hurts so much." Henry was in so much pain that tears streamed down her face. It turned out her skin around her waist got caught in the zipper. Jacob stared at the fresh blood on her fingers and said coldly, "Pain. A little pain is good. It'll help you remember not to covet other people's things." She sobbed as she changed into her own clothes, explaining, "Cousin, I just genuinely thought this wedding dress was beautiful. I don't want to say much more. This morning, I already told you not to touch my things without my permission." Jacob took cash from the safe. "We agreed originally on $8,000 a month. It hasn't been a full month yet, but out of consideration for family, I'll round it up to $10,000 for you." Hearing Jacob say this, Henry shook her head. "Cousin, I was wrong. I'll never dare to do it again." She sidled over, pleading, "Cousin, Think of the baby, I can't bear to leave her. Jacob hesitated somewhat. But thinking of the lipstick she had touched, and the incident of her secretly wearing the wedding dress, Jacob felt particularly disgusted. This was incorrigible behavior. I misjudged you, I thought you were honest. Now pack your things and leave. Seeing Jacob's determination, Henry stopped crying instantly. She stood up, staring fixedly at Jacob. I'm leaving, don't you dare regret it. With that, she stomped down the stairs. Jacob followed her down, watching her pack to prevent her from taking anything else here. This lipstick is yours. Jacob handed her the lipstick. She hesitated for a moment, but still took it without a word. She walked towards the entryway. Just then, Julian walked in. She immediately dropped her luggage, flew towards Julian, and hugged him with both arms. Brother-in-law, I don't want to leave. Julian opened his arms and looked at Jacob. He stammered. No one is telling you to leave, she said aggrievedly. My cousin is making me leave because I wore her clothes. Brother-in-law, you're the man of the house, please let me stay. Jacob was dumbfounded. However, thinking of Phoenix, she forced herself to swallow her anger. Julian patted her shoulder. You should let go of me first, she said sweetly. Brother-in-law, please promise me you won't let me leave. It gave Jacob goosebumps just listening to her this time. Never mind her uncle. Even for Abigail's sake, Jacob couldn't tolerate it anymore. She directly pulled Henry over and slapped her hard across the face. Henry, do you think no one sees through your dirty intentions? Do you know anything about boundaries between men and women? Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she gazed amorously in Julian's direction. I didn't. Cousin, you're slandering me. Julian sighed. River, are you overthinking this? Jacob held her breath and slapped Julian again. His glasses flew off and landed on the floor. Henry shrieked loudly. Brother-in-law works hard to provide for the family. How dare you hit him? Jacob stared coldly at Henry. Who told you he's the one who provides for the family? Jacob stepped closer, and Henry's confidence waned. What earning potential could you possibly have? A 2-year degree holder. Suddenly, Jacob wasn't angry anymore. There was no need to get angry with someone who had such a mindset. She turned her head and spoke to Julian. Honey, is it true that you provide for the family in our home? Julian avoided Jacob's gaze and said in a low voice, Henry, your cousin and I founded the company together. She was in disbelief, shaking her head and saying, that's impossible. Jacob opened the door, directly threw her luggage out, and then shoved her. Get out now. Julian bent down to pick up his glasses and sighed. After having the baby, your temper is still so hot. Seeing Jacob remain silent, he put his arm around her shoulder, coaxing her. I'm also doing this for your own good. Look, Blake takes care of the baby. You have so much less to worry about. I don't want you to work so hard. Jacob pursed her lips. All right, Mr. Man of the house. You always have your reasons. Just then, the baby started crying. Julian quickly said, don't look at me. I can't comfort a baby. She shot him a glare. Jacob picked up the baby, but after half an hour, she still wasn't calm. Why is she so much harder to soothe than before? Henry is indeed more attentive when caring for the baby. Julian stood far away. He put on his clothes, ready to leave. The baby is crying is giving me a headache. In going out first. After about an hour of comforting, the baby finally stopped crying. She gently put her down and massaged her shoulders. Holding a baby was truly exhausting work. She still needed to find a nanny. Otherwise, Jacob wouldn't be able to manage on her own for the next 2 days. Jacob began interviewing nannies. The more she looked, the more she shook her head. Julian tried to persuade Jacob. Why don't you invite Blake back? Jacob gave him a sidelong glance and questioned him. What do you mean by that? I don't believe you didn't notice her ulterior motives. She's just been out of touch with people for too long. I can just avoid her, can't I? Jacob stared at him for a long time. Julian put on an honest expression. Let's see. After seeing off the 10th nanny, Abigail and Phoenix came to their door. Behind them was Henry. Silent, and with her head bowed. As soon as Phoenix entered, he began to apologize profusely. Riley, it's all my fault for not raising her properly. Your cousin is too disobedient. She actually stole your things. I've already talked to her about it. His tone was very humble. Facing Phoenix, Jacob couldn't keep a cold expression. When Jacob was little, he was very good to her. Abigail poked Jacob with her hand, giving her a look. Mainly, Jacob hadn't yet decided whether to let her come back or not. Just then, the baby cried, and Henry quietly said, "Cousin, I'll go wash my hands first, and then go to the room to comfort the baby." Jacob nodded. Henry was in the room for less than 10 minutes, and the baby immediately stopped crying. "See how good Blake is at comforting babies," Abigail also chimed in, pleading. "That's right. Blake just couldn't see reason. Let her help you." Phoenix didn't mention at all how Henry had clung to Julian that day. Jacob thought about it and didn't speak. The main thing was, the baby truly couldn't do without Henry. Seeing Jacob's expression soften, Phoenix quickly told Henry to come out. "Henry, come out." "Your cousin agreed." Henry clasped her hands together and stood awkwardly in front of Jacob. "Cousin, everything before was my fault. I won't do it again for the sake of the baby. Phoenix and Abigail, I can let you come back, but the previous situation must absolutely not happen again. You understand what I'm saying, right?" Henry's face changed. Fearing Jacob would say something more, she nodded repeatedly. "Cousin, I was wrong before. From now on, I'll listen to you." With Henry back, Jacob finally let out a complete sigh of relief. Finally, she had time to properly meet up with my friend. During the meal, Jacob talked about Henry. My friend listened, and then suddenly said, "Your cousin, a young Cruz, is so good at taking care of babies. There isn't something wrong, is there?" Jacob's heart immediately leapt into her throat. What could be wrong? My friend took out her phone, scrolled Ed for a while, and handed it to Jacob. "Here, look, this nanny was feeding sleeping pills to the child. The child was indeed very well behaved. Drowsy every day." Jacob couldn't sit still for another second. As soon as she entered the house, she found Julian and Henry both in the living room. Jacob looked at the two of them suspiciously. Julian explained, "I just got home." Jacob nodded, her mind filled with thoughts of the baby. "Where's the baby?" Henry said with a smile. "The baby is sleeping. Jacob began to recall. Ever since Henry came to take care of the baby, she had almost always comforted the baby in the nursery. Jacob couldn't see the specific situation, but there was no evidence now, so she couldn't say anything. So Jacob said to Henry, "Henry, I've thought about it. I also had some shortcomings before. To show my apology, I'll book a tour package for you to go traveling." Henry's face lit up with joy. "Cousin, thank you." Jacob valued her privacy and had never installed cameras in her home. This was a good opportunity to install some cameras these few days. "Wife, I have to go on a business trip for a few days because of company matters." Julian returned home and began packing his things. Jacob frowned. What a coincidence. The company also has matters. Jacob leaned against the door frame and nodded. "Okay. Go soon and come back soon." As soon as they left, Jacob contacted the installer to come over. Cameras were installed in every room, providing full coverage. Julian also sent photos. "Wife, this is my work meal today." This was highly unusual. When he used to go on business trips, he never sent her things like this. Jacob had a bad feeling. "Cousin, I'm back. The sea there was beautiful. I even brought back some seafood after Henry's trip." She looked even brighter. "You even thought to bring me something. Thank you. The baby is so hard to soothe without you." Jacob said this while observing her expression. Sure enough, a flicker of triumph appeared in her eyes. "I miss the baby too. I'll go see her." As soon as she entered the nursery, Jacob opened her phone to view the surveillance cameras. The baby happened to cry, and she picked her up and comforted her. The baby immediately quieted down. Had Jacob misjudged her? Jacob shook her head, preparing to go out for a few days and set up a sting operation. Henry Just in time. You're back. I'm going back home for 2 days. Call me if anything happens, cousin. Don't worry. Jacob booked a nearby hotel, monitoring the situation at home the entire time. As a result, no sooner had Jacob left than Julian arrived home. Henry acted like a wife welcoming her husband home. She went up and kissed Julian's neck. I missed you so much. The moment we parted, Julian also embraced her and said emotionally that tigress finally left. Jacob involuntarily clenched her hands. The two of them shamelessly became intimate in broad daylight right there in the living room. Henry lay in Julian's arms, coaxing, "When are you going to divorce and marry me? I want to. But if I divorce, the assets will shrink, then can't you transfer the assets?" Jacob stared at the cheating pair, wishing she could go home immediately. In the middle of the night, the baby cried again. Julian rolled over, not moving. Henry, her face full of annoyance, went to the nursery. Jacob watched her every move closely. In the video, she took out a white pill and directly put it into the baby's mouth. A short while later, the baby fell asleep again. The ashtray was piled high with cigarette butts. Jacob sat there quietly all night, betrayed by the man I shared my bed with, and with her child being abused by the mistress. The two of them were still having an affair right under Jacob's nose. Jacob wished she could send Henry to jail immediately, but thinking of the property entanglement between Jacob and Julian, Jacob couldn't tip them off. After getting ready, Jacob made a phone call. "Hello, Henry, I'll be back soon. Is the baby okay?" Henry's voice was panicked. "No, nothing. Everything's fine." In the video, she was still on Jacob's bed, answering the phone. By the time Jacob got home, Julian had already left. Henry clearly didn't have much energy. Jacob scoffed inwardly. "Well, they were up so late yesterday. It was normal to be tired, cousin. Why are you back so soon?" Henry asked cautiously. Jacob crossed her arms and leaned back on the sofa. "Oh, did you do something wrong and not want me to come back?" she said awkwardly. "Cousin, you're just joking. What wrong could I have done?" Jacob had to admire her. She didn't blush or her heart race. "It's mainly Abigail. She said she really misses me and the baby. I'm going to take the baby to stay with her for a few days." Henry visibly brightened, but she still feigned regret, saying, "I also can't bear to leave the baby. Why don't I go with you?" "No need. You should just rest well and tidy up the house at home." Ignoring her joy at seeing Jacob leave, Jacob took the baby and drove directly to the hospital for a checkup. A small dose of sleeping pills was detected. It didn't cause significant harm to the baby. Fortunately, it was discovered early. Otherwise, it would have affected liver function. After hearing what Dr. Thomas said, Jacob breathed a sigh of relief. After settling the baby, Jacob went directly to the company. Jacob directly pushed open the door to Julian's office. Jacob pretended not to notice him, frantically hanging up the phone. "Wife, what brings you here?" Jacob sat opposite him, saying nothing. She enjoyed his panic for a moment. She then spoke. "A friend of mine introduced me to an investment project. The profits are very high." Julian's interest was indeed piqued after Jacob explained in detail. He said, "Then we certainly can't miss this opportunity." "That's right. But high returns mean high risks for people like us. It hasn't been easy getting to where we are." He nodded. Jacob continued, "We must avoid risks, wife. You're the one with good ideas. Just tell me directly. What should we do to ensure everything was foolproof?" Before making that suggestion, Jacob began to reminisce about the past. "Honey, when we started our business together, how much hardship did we endure to develop better? I even sold the premarital house my parents had bought back then." His face was also filled with emotion. "We are both husband and wife, and friends who fight side by side." Julian nodded. "That's right. Back then, my parents didn't approve of me and wouldn't lend me money, only you always believed in me. So this time, we can first fake divorce, transfer the assets to my name, and you can go ahead and do it." Julian hesitated. Jacob upped the ante. "If this investment succeeds, You'll truly be the man of the house, even if it doesn't work out. It's still a fake divorce between us, as the woman who shared his bed. She knew him too well at first. He could still hide it. But as the company got better and better, his Daniel became more and more pronounced. He always wanted Jacob to completely leave the company and become a housewife. Now that there was such a good opportunity, he wouldn't give it up indeed. As soon as he heard this, he made up his mind completely okay. Coming out of the county clerk's office, Jacob held up the divorce papers in her hand. You're my ex-husband now. Julian grabbed Jacob's hand. Don't tease me, Jacob just smiled without speaking. Jacob walked behind him. Entering the home. You're back. Henry's joyful voice rang out. Julian couldn't dodge in time and didn't get a chance to speak. Henry had already latched onto Julian. Cousin, you're back. Seeing Jacob behind her, it was as if she had seen a ghost. She instantly got off Julian, then she stammered out an excuse. I'm dating a guy. I thought it was him. Julian also straightened his face. Henry, you can't bring men home. Jacob watched the two of them act, smiling. What do you mean, bringing men home? Isn't Henry's man you? Both their faces were flustered. Julian instinctively denied it directly. Wife, what nonsense are you talking about? You're the only one in my heart. Don't talk rubbish. Henry looked at him with resentment. Henry, look what this is. Henry leaned in closer. Cousin, you actually got divorced? Yes. To complete your wish, she played dumb. Cousin, why are you acting strange today? The doorbell rang. Julian went to open the door. Cruz. Dean, why are you here? And who are these people behind you? Henry asked uneasily. Abigail and Phoenix also said, puzzled. Your cousin said she had something to announce. Jacob stood up and nodded a greeting to the four people in black suits behind them to prevent Julian from acting out of desperation. Jacob had hired for bodyguards. I do have something to announce. Julian and I are divorced. It's a fake divorce. Julian spun around anxiously. River, everything was fine. Why get divorced? Jacob smiled and continued. Yes. If everything was truly fine, why would we get divorced? It certainly wasn't fine. Because I saw Henry and Julian, that cheating pair, sleeping together. The faces of the others varied. Julian tried to explain, but Jacob directly told him to shut up. I have video evidence. Phoenix's face flushed red, and he said he didn't believe it. Riley, are you misunderstanding things? Jacob directly played the video. Phoenix, how could I make up things without evidence? Phoenix raised his hand and slapped her. Shameless. How could you steal your cousin's man? Abigail also started scolding her. Julian immediately knelt down and said, wife, she was the one who seduced me first. I was forced. Men always blame others first. Jacob looked at him and said scornfully, you're a grown man. Were your pants pulled down for you? Henry shrieked. She divorced you. It's perfect. You can marry me. You promised me before. She struggled free from Phoenix's grasp and pulled Julian. Can't you act like a man? Julian didn't even glance at her and simply pushed her away. Ouch. Henry stumbled and hit her head on the corner of the sofa. Blood oozed out. She still wouldn't give up, standing up and saying, you promised me that you'd marry me. Julian's face was as dark as if he wanted to kill someone. Look at yourself. Me marry you? Are you worthy of me? I was just playing with you. Jacob let out a snicker and clapped her hands vigorously. I just love watching them tear each other apart. Henry glared fiercely at Jacob. Had enough of watching? If you have, I'll send you to the police station. Phoenix was the first to jump out in opposition. We're family. After all, Henry was wrong. Yes, she stole your husband, but that's not against the law. Jacob continued to project the video of Henry feeding the baby medicine onto the big screen in the living room. Stealing someone's husband isn't illegal, of course, but she fed my child sleeping pills. That's against the law. Abigail grabbed Henry and pinched her several times. How could you be so wicked? You truly are an ungrateful wretch. Julian stared at Henry in disbelief. You are truly vicious. How could you do that to such a small child? Henry scoffed. Don't pretend to be a good dean anymore. You've never even looked after the baby. Jacob motioned for the hired bodyguards to escort Henry out. Phoenix, his eyes streaming with tears, pleaded desperately, your cousin still needs to take civil service exams. This will leave a criminal record for your cousin's future. Please let her go. Jacob stopped and tilted her head to look at him. Phoenix thought there was room for negotiation and continued. How good I used to be to you. For my sake, let her go. Phoenix, you were indeed good to me before. But that was also because Abigail was subsidizing your home. Wasn't it? She touched my child. I will absolutely not let her off the hook after she was sent to the police station. The evidence was complete, and they just waited for the follow-up back home. Julian began to continuously play the emotional card. Wife, I was temporarily bewitched. It's all my fault. Jacob bored. Lai looked at her nails. She had truly heard enough of these words. She asked with interest. Julian, if half the assets were in your name, would you still act this way? Perhaps the sarcasm on Jacob's face provoked him. He lost his composure and began to accuse Jacob. The root cause is all your fault. If you were a little gentler, would I look at other women? What's wrong with me wanting a gentle wife? He finally stopped acting. When we met, I was already like this. You're the one who's wrong. You changed your heart. His face was distorted with rage. You damn bitch. This was all your scheme, wasn't it? Conspiring with that slut Henry, just to seize my assets. In telling you, this isn't over. I'll sue you. Not content with just threats, he raised his fist to hit Jacob. The bodyguards immediately stood in front of Jacob, their eyes questioning. Jacob hit him. If he sues, I can handle it, but be mindful of the limits. The four men formed a circle and began to take care of Jacob's ex-husband soon. Please for mercy, echoed in the room. Wife, I was wrong. Make them stop. You filthy bitch. How dare you have Jacob beaten? Jacob raised an eyebrow. Still had the energy to curse at Jacob. Hit him harder until he can't scream anymore. After a muffled thud, the actions stopped. Boss, that's enough. We avoided vital areas. Julian was bruised and swollen all over, but his face was untouched. Jacob squatted in front of him and patted his cheek. Julian, this is the consequence of your disloyalty. You want to be the master of this home, but it depends if fate allows it. Jacob and his people threw Julian himself, along with Julian's luggage, to his parents' home. His mother screamed the moment she saw Julian. Who beat Jacob's son like this? Jacob is here to tell you. Your son cheated with Henry. Jacob and I are divorced, and he will walk away with nothing. His mother didn't even look at Julian, grabbing Jacob to ask. Walk away with nothing, meaning not a single penny left. Jacob estimated he should have several $100,000 in his account. He still has some in his account, right? His mother finally smiled, then said smugly, Jacob's son cheating. That just shows his capabilities. Divorce then. Jacob sees who would want you now. Ashley, the company shares and properties are all under Jacob's name. Jacob can find anyone he wants. Don't you worry. Wailing and lamenting sounds erupted from behind. Oh dear. What will Jacob do now? As soon as Jacob returned home, he couldn't help but think of that cheating pair messing around in the home Jacob had designed. Jacob felt utterly disgusted. He immediately hired a renovation team to redecorate. Jacob had thought Henry would be sentenced quickly, but John came to Jacob with a solemn expression. She's pregnant, and since the child didn't suffer any substantial harm, the final outcome is probation. Jacob said angrily. Probation? That's as good as no sentence at all. John said helplessly. There's nothing we can do. Jacob asked Abigail to constantly monitor the situation at Phoenix's home, and to call Jacob if there was any news. Your Phoenix got her out. He wants her to abort the child. Oh, What a tragic mess, Jacob pressed. Does Henry agree? Abigail sighed. No. She says if the child is gone, she'll kill herself. Your Phoenix has her locked up in the home, not letting her go find Julian on Jacob's end. Through my friend's introduction, he found a reliable and decent nanny. After a month of vetting, Jacob felt confident enough to start handling the company's business without Julian. No one would hinder Jacob's plans. Work was a good medicine, filling Jacob's life. Just as Jacob had forgotten about the Henry situation, Abigail brought Jacob the latest news. It's over. Henry is dead. Jacob was startled and drove straight to Abigail's place. Ma'am, what happened? Abigail's eyes were swollen. That child. She snuck out to find Julian herself. They got into an argument, and Julian stabbed her to death with a knife. After hearing it, Jacob was a mix of emotions. Jacob only wanted her to face the punishment she deserved, but he never wanted her to die. Phoenix and Grace had already cried themselves unconscious. Finally, Jacob sighed and went to handle Henry's funeral arrangements. He also saw Julian at the detention center. He was unshaven. Seeing Jacob, he laughed self-deprecatingly. Life, you never know what it will throw at you the next second. He shook his handcuffs furiously. It's all that bitch's fault for ruining Jacob. She still wanted to stay with Jacob. Ugh. Jacob looked at him with pity and left in silence, walking out of the detention center. The sun outside was blinding. In this world, there are two things one cannot look at directly. One is the sun. The other is the human heart.